holistic and an encompassing concept. It's about creating an ecosystem in the villages where prosperity begins to happen. When women understand their rights, I can say that they are becoming empowered. And when women become empowered, the whole family becomes empowered. Don't just be job seekers, become job creators.
I am your host Gaurav Garg and we welcome all our viewers to our show Amazing Mentor. Today with us is Professor Roopinder Oberai. She is a distinguished academic policy influencer and a thought leader in governance and social innovation. Professor Roopinder Oberai has made significant contribution to academia, authored influential books and established the Center for Innovation and Social Enterprise. In today's conversation, we will talk about her recent visit to Model Gao, an initiative by Dr. Hiralal IAS. It's a pleasure to welcome Professor Roopinder Oberai to our show, Amazing Mentor. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Gaurav, for inviting me over.
So tell me about your recent visit to Model Gao, an initiative by Hiralal IAS. Could you share your initial impression of the project and its impact on village you visited?
We recently visited a village called Tharoli, which is near Saharanpur. And the idea of visiting that village primarily came from Dr. Hiralal. The initial impression while we visited Tharoli was we went basically to evaluate the concept of Model Gao. We had in our mind some indicators around which we will try to assess why this is called Model Gao. So when we visited, we stayed there for 3 days. We interacted with the local community, the local Sarpanch, the important families in that area, interacted with youth, interacted with women. So we got a very deep insight into the village thoroughly.
So what specific aspect of Model Gao stood out to you during your visit and how do you believe it is transforming the villages in Uttar Pradesh and potentially across India?
When we went to the Model Gao, we saw some of the initial reports which are there, which Dr. Hiralal ji had shared with me already, that we had a specific understanding about what we are going for. And we want to be actually an individual evaluators, absolutely neutral and unbiased in trying to understand what that particular report is saying and what is the ground reality. So we had indicators in mind like livelihood, we had indicators like pakka sadak, infrastructure, lighting, school, hospital, employability. All these indicators we had kept in our mind when we went to Tharoli. And our initial impression, because we stayed there for 3 days, was that we tried to dig deeper into each of these indicators. For example, our first day visit was at the local school in Tharoli, and we interacted with around 100 plus students, primary school students. There was around 5 teachers on that day, and we tried to understand the problems, the initiative of the local community to set up a school, and what was the response of particularly of the girls who were there in the school. So we asked them, do your parents allow you to come to school? Are you happy in the school? Do you get your enough learning? And we also went to the extent of asking certain elementary questions. For example, from class 3 and class 4, we told them to read a paragraph, do some sums, mathematical sums on the board. And we were very happy to see that the students were able to read paragraphs of Hindi, recite poems, express themselves, draw something, solve mathematical problems. So this was one of the indicators. Second day, we went and met some Anganwadi workers, Asha workers. We wanted to understand the health. And also in the later half of the second day, we had a whole community of about 100 women who gathered in the panchayat vicinity, and we talk to them face to face along with Anganwadi and Asha workers about their health, about their hygiene, about child control, about their freedom to express themselves, how willing they were to get employed or work. So we got excellent response because there was awareness. When you go to the village and rural areas, there'll always be some problems because any community, any society will have some people who their demands are not fulfilled completely. But I can confidently say that 70 to 80% of the people were very happy with the changes, development which were happening. And just to add one point, the most spectacular part which I found with the women were that they are aware and they're vocal. I think that is a genesis for any change to begin. Because when women understand their rights, I can say that they are becoming empowered. And when women become empowered, the whole family becomes empowered.
So you've talked about education, healthcare, roads. So according to you, what is the role of Model Gao in enhancing the living standard of a village?
I think Model Gao is a more holistic and an encompassing concept. It's about creating an ecosystem in the villages where prosperity begins to happen. Awareness begins to reach the common man or common women. A village is what Gandhi said. India, even today, still resides in village. 60% of the population still resides in village. And one of the major challenges in the villages are that we're seeing excessive amount of migration to the cities. So we want urbanization. As somebody who works in the field of development and public policy, we're not averse to urbanization, but excessive amount of urbanization and migration of the local labor to urban areas can be detrimental to the villages also. So there has to be balance, and villages also should be equipped to provide enough livelihood and employability, opportunities, education, health to the village itself, so that we're not seeing excessive amount of transfer of young people getting away from villages and getting to the cities and becoming part of unorganized, informal labor. And on that count, I'll just add another point that one of the things which came to my mind was, despite some opportunities there in the village, largely the villages continue to be land dependent or agricultural dependent economies even today. So my recommendation even to the Model Gao would be that they need to do something to create small micro businesses which can link the women, for example, to the job market. So this was one deficit which I found, that the communities had land, but some men particularly preferred to go to the cities to work because the labor rate in the cities was higher than what they would get in village when they were working as agricultural labor. And the difference could be as less as 100 or 150 rupees. They were wanting to leave the village for as less an amount of 100 rupees per day labor differentials. So when I say Model Gao, it's relatively a good place to be in, but that doesn't mean that it's a perfect Gao which doesn't need any improvements. All situations would require some change, some improvement, some growth, some development. So that is what I want to say.
So how did the principle of Mahatma Gandhi, Gram Swaraj and Abdul Kalam's providing urban amenities to rural areas resonate with the Model Gao initiative as you observe on the ground?
The Indian society per se, I would say, and the labor market and the economic divisions between the primary and secondary and the tertiary labor distribution continues to be dependent on the agriculture. In that sense, what Mahatma Gandhi or what Abdul Kalam ji was saying is that unless and until we make villages self-sufficient, unless and until the concept of Swaraj reaches the villages, and Swaraj not only as an independence, but independence from poverty, independence from liberty, independence from marginalization, independence from peripheralization. Unless and until that happens, India as a whole cannot prosper. And I think the modern policies of the government are indicating towards that. We need to have robust farmers community, and farmers and agricultural community should be linked to modern food supply chain, for example. So modernization of agriculture, education for the people living in villages, women empowerment, health facilities in the village continue to be an important parameters for Indian developmental model. Equitable and inclusive development, the moment we think about that, it has to resonate and it has to be so encompassing to bring every, as Mahatma Gandhi said, the last man, the beneficiary of the policies of the government.
So as you talked about the Center for Innovation and Social Enterprises in the beginning, so what is the link between Center for Innovation and Social Enterprises and Model Gao?
The Center for Innovation and Social Enterprise was set up in 2020, and we have been existing for 3 years in Hiralal College, University of Delhi. And the reason this center was set up, because we did one extensive study which was funded by the British Council, and that study wanted to understand that the whole of India, or rather for startup technology. But are we really thinking about social change, social innovation, social enterprises? Now, social enterprises are type of hybrid organizations which keep profitability in mind, but also have people and planet in their consideration. So when I say Model Gao mission and social enterprises are highly interlinked in a sense that we are wanting the development not just as an economic indicator, we are wanting development to be holistic in indicators where human development indexes, women empowerment, sanitation facilities for the women, education, health, and women employability also becomes part of it. And social innovation includes rural innovation. It includes what we say in India, jugaad, what we talk about as a frugal innovation in the agricultural sector. So we may talk about innovation which is relevant for big cities and metropolitans and for global audience, but India needs to have its focus also in the agriculture sector where innovation, change, technological development, digitalization also needs to be happening. So CISE, which is known as Center for Innovation and Social Enterprises, puts its lens onto the social entrepreneurs, social innovators, social change makers. So that's how it becomes overlapping in that senses.
So could you describe any challenges or obstacles that you may have encountered during your visit and how the Model Gao team has addressed those challenges?
Every situation would have its own challenges. As I said in one of my comments, that Model Town is Model Gaon, but it's not reached to the definition where we can say it's a perfect gown. It has indicators, it suffices some indicators, but there's a hell lot of scope for further improvements. For example, schools till 8th class. I would want that Model Gaon should have school till 12th class. There is a limited availability of Anganwadi workers and Asha workers. So maybe a health center which is working more regularly there would help. The awareness of child control, the awareness about using sanitary pads instead of cloth or other things was still lacking among women. Women employability continues to be lower in that village. There are roads available and also there are cameras and lighting which has happened. But I think the employability and the linkages of the Gaon to urban centers economically still needs to be worked upon. There is a library there, but library doesn't have sufficient books. We need to work more in terms of resources. As I said, these are some of the things and challenges which continue to be there in the village. Modernization, modern schools, better schools, schools till 12, employability, women awareness, child control are some of the indicators which randomly come to my mind just now.
So you have extensive experience in academia and policy. How do you believe academia can further engage with initiatives like Model Gao to bridge the gap between research and real-world impact?
I think the new education policy itself focuses very clearly on these things, and the government's focus on critical thinking, for example, the education policy which we're talking about, critical thinking, having value-added courses. If you look into the new education policies, the focus has shifted from courses which were not there when I was a student, for example. Now, the new education policy has introduced courses like skill enhancement, value-added courses. The emphasis is on innovation. Don't just be job seekers, become job creators. Think about innovation and be future ready to solve problems of the future. For example, climate change, the future green jobs, green economy, alternative sources of energy, biofuels. So I feel the future of education and the market and the economy gets highly interlinked in today's era. And the changes which some new education policy has brought are very well thought of, and I'm sure our students will become more skilled and also prepared to enter the job market with better sense of reality, what I call is grounded reality, having empathy, not just understanding things from textbooks or sitting in library, but rather visiting the places, having a real understanding, having empathy, observation as a tool of knowing the problem, and also bottom-up approach. Very often policymakers sit in ivory towers, as they say, in AC environment, and I think that needs to change. People who make policies need to be visiting the ground and also not undervaluing the suggestions which come from the people in the villages, because I think they have a lot of wisdom. They may not have degrees, but they understand, for example, crop differentiation, soil health. They may not have the modern measurable techniques, but they have a lot of sense. So we need to capture the indigenous knowledge, which is there, which has been left latent. And because of the elitist model that we follow in the development, in the planning commissions, in the education sector, that needs to be broken, and more inclusive stakeholder participation of community engagement needs to come in. And herein, I think the academia, corporates, and the government bureaucracy needs to handhold and work like a triangular way to helping each other get better sense, formulate more relevant, more doable, implementable policies rather than policies which look good on paper but fail when it comes to implementation.
So, in your opinion, what is the key takeaway from your visit to Model Gao that you would like to share with broader audience, including students, policymakers, and fellow academia?
There were many takeaways. Personally, I feel that I born and brought up in Delhi, and my family has been largely Delhi-based and metro-based. So it was an eye-opening experience for me also. It means I specialize in political science and public administration and public policy, and a lot of what I understand about Gram Panchayat, Panchayati Raj system, the 73rd and the 74th Amendment of the Constitution, was very book-laden. I think when you go to the ground and meet, particularly in Tharoli, where we have women Pradhan, it was very, very interesting to understand that when women is sitting on the seat of power, she brings in different element of diversity and understanding to the whole issue. So the eye-opening was that what we assume that women and people and community in villages are not so knowledgeable or lack understanding of the problems. I think that is it's a myth. I think they know the problem. What they need is a better articulation. What they need is the power corridors to open for them where they can express themselves. And what we need is more engagement with the local community, a participatory, democratic, very Gandhian, a very open kind of thing, participatory engagement models where we make them what we say bhagidar in the development model. So bhagidari, when you own up your own problems and when they become themselves the solution providers for their challenges, the implementation and the barriers of policies coming from the top breaks, and that ownership and sense of belonging will galvanize further change. It's a simple formula. If I have made a solution which solves my problem, I will be more passionate to get that implemented. And I think that is what we needed. Stakeholder model of development, engagement, very horizontal kind of governance models, transparency, responsiveness, accountability and also regular impact assessments. We make a policy, but independent auditing of social policies is an important tool to understand the strength or the weaknesses of particular policies. Is what my thoughts was a takeaway, as you said, from my visit.
Professor Roopinder Oberai commitment to research, education and social impact is inspiring. We thank them for sharing their insights and experience about their recent visit to Model Gao. We look forward for their continued contribution to academia and governance. Thanks for joining us today.
It was a wonderful experience. I can only sum up by that. And thanks to the local villagers, Pradhan ji, wahan ke Sir Chaudhary ji, Sandeep Chaudhary, Dr. Hiralal ji, for giving this wonderful opportunity to Center for Innovation and Social Enterprise, me and 6 of our students who stayed there for 3 days. It was an enriching, eye-opening, very insightful visit for us. And my students have taken a lot. And I think it's going to leave a lasting impression.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.